HaKadosh, Aleinu, Aleinu, Karasa, HaKadosh, Aleinu, Aleinu, Karasa,
Okay, recording.
In this case, the word bechina actually emphasized the unique rule more than the fact of rule, because, like we said, there could be a limited base, but its function is not due to its limit. Whereas a cup, its function is due to its limit. Does it bring a keli?
What the keli? It could.
That's what a keli is. It takes the oil and translates it at its level.
And you could, with a basin, you could have either or.
Basin is not either or. It is limited. The fact of it that it's limited, but it does not. That does not provide for its functionality. You put things into the water in a basin or in a lake or in a pool. It's all the same thing. The water stays put. Doesn't change its nature and its play.
So why does bechinas gvul show more the essential usage of gvul than gvul itself?
In this case, the bechinas gvul means, besides the fact that it's factually limited, that does not make it gvul. If it's limited in terms of what its function is, which is the bechina, which is not a physical thing. You can have a physical basin, it's also limited, but it's not bechinas gvul.
It doesn't serve to disseminate.
It doesn't serve to disseminate. That's right. The gvul element is for a completely different reason. You don't want to flood your house, so that's not the functionality of the water itself. Yeah. Okay, let's pursue it. All right, so we are at the end of the third line in this paragraph. It says, the oiris are mislavish in keli. Okay, let's refocus over here. The object of what we're trying to get to and to understand and to point out that the oiris themselves have an element of gvul. Not due to the effect of the keli, but the oiris themselves have an element of gvul. And we approach it from this angle. Since the oil is mislavish in keli, and the keli is mugbal, therefore the oil has to have an inherent element of gvul. So we have this muscle of the water in a cup. it's a little difficult to find in the water element that the water has an inherent element of gvul. Although, how does a keli feed the person? Drip by drip. Water in a basin or in its original place does not demonstrate, does not function in a drip by drip. It is a cumulative presence of water. But when it comes to drinking, you have to break it down into little drips. And this is what happens when you put it into a keli. The whole thought of putting water into a keli for the purpose of drinking is first and foremost facilitated by the fact that water does contain drops. Otherwise, this whole phenomenon could not even be conceptualized. When we come to the next one, the Nymphospherius, we'll find a different venue to correlate. Okay, let's see inside. Oil beauty gvul mugbal cannot be, anything beauty mugbal cannot be mislavish in something that's mugbal. And then, therefore, examining the inyan of the way it is lamaylo, hakelim hein b'chinas gvul. The kelim are b'chinas gvul. Where do we see that the kelim are b'chinas gvul? This is exactly the question we discussed. Where do you see the kelim b'chinas gvul? They have oil. So who says that they have the phenomenon of gvul? That they function only due to their gvul? The answer is Sha'arei yesh mitzius spheres ba'atzilus. Since that there is a mitzius, an actual presence of spheres in Atzilus. Okay, again, as I said, we will bring it down to the human being in a moment. There's an actual Matthias of spheres. Spheres means lights, measured, functional aspects. She'ein b'bchinas mitzius chochma v'chesed. That are in that beginnings of Tzius Chochma Chesed. So here, to identify the Mitzius Chochma Chesed and the beginnings of Mitzius Chochma Chesed, so we'll have to translate it in Chochma Chesed per se in a human being. It is natural that one sees somebody else, in a suffering state, it bothers him. But we have to focus in and distinguish between this bothering and the real in Chachma or Chesed. When he sees somebody suffer, it bothers him. It could very well be because he reflects that suffering onto himself. He's not really into the other person's shoes, so to speak, and is concerned about his suffering, but it reflects itself on himself. So he feels the suffering due to a translation of it onto himself. This is not the inyan of Chesed. Chesed is the pshat that you actually are relating to the other person's situation itself as being his situation, not as it translates and affects you. So to demonstrate this, I thought the best way would be in a father and son situation, one's own children. Now the relationship between a father and a son, between one's own children, is not based on midas. There's an essential, a wholesome relationship there. It's like the basin, it's the reality itself. They are one entity. From this one entity, then flows also an oil that one actually relates and has an interest on the very specific levels. Dingen van chesed, dingen van gvura. You want your child to learn, and you insist that he learn. When you insist that your child should learn, you could look at it also from two venues, and two levels. You project, if he doesn't learn, what's going to be when he grows up? It's going to be a total dodo. That's on the dynamic level. But then there's a completely different thing. This is the real dissemination of this oil. You want him to learn because this is a good thing for him to learn. Exactly that. This is from chesed or gvura. You don't want him to waste his time. Not because of some broader consequences. You want him to be contained in this discipline. This is in from gvura as distinct from the overall concern. Although this also emanates from the original relationship, although it is also true that we have the minas chesed gvura for strange children, for other people, but on a child we can readily relate to it. There is an overall a complete relationship, a complete concern about, so to speak, the long term, the reality of this person, and then there is this specific situation. If he wastes his time, you want to preclude that, because he has to have the inyan from gvura, and he has to have the inyan to self-contain. And you want to teach him that. The same thing, if he needs something, you have chesed that you want to provide it for him. Again, not because of broader concern, but just for the momentary and specific concern. This is what's called mitzius chachma, mitzius firis, Metzias Firas Atzilus, Bechinas Metzias Chachma B'Chesed. In other words, you have an overall relationship to your child, to other people. Then you take that relationship and you translate it in something very limited, very finite. You're a teacher, or whatever you do, everything you are defining specific function that you are bestowing to these people. It is based and it drawn from a overall concern, overall relationship. But that stays on a higher level. You cannot teach a child or an adult if in front of your mind is that this person is going to go to pot. If he doesn't learn this, his life is kaput. You can't teach under these circumstances. Although, yes, indeed, going back to a higher level, you want to teach him because you want him to be a successful individual, especially you're a successful human being. Not just to know this. But when you teach him the specific thing, you teach him that you should know this, the Aleph and the Beis and the Gimel. In order to be able to focus on this Aleph and the Beis and the Gimel, and whatever else it is that you're supplying, there has to be a very defined midah that you are concerned about him knowing Aleph, not him knowing anything or everything. That he should understand this particular moment. Like we spoke yesterday, speak about this all the time. That's something that a person has experienced intellectually, even for a moment, is a real experience. When the teacher teaches, he's not teaching, making sure that you will know it 2 years from today. I want you to understand it now. What happens 2 years from today, it all depends how you're going to process what's going to be. That's not what is in mind. I want you to understand it in a limited, in a temporary manner. This comes from a specific koyach, a midah of chochma and chesed. This means that the initial oir, the initial relationship oir, is mislabish in a keli. How can this oir, I'm speaking in terms of teaching, in terms of relationship, how can this oir be mislabish in a finite keli if it itself did not contain any gvul inherently? This is what we're learning here now.
Can you repeat that last question? Sorry.
How can this relation, this chochma v'chesed, comes from a higher perception of the teacher, of the father? If in that higher perception there was not an element of gvul at all, of chesed and gvura, there was only the reality itself, the reality of life. How can we be mislabish in a keli of chesed and gvura?
And in the mashal, this is the overall relationship between the father and the son?
Right. The overall relationship, this is the source of all the midas.
And how does it come a very limited functional...
That's right. That in this oil, there is, in the original oil, there are the elements of gvul. That's exactly what we're trying to say.
in the original order, in the original overall relationship.
That's right. There is the element in oil, even in the oil, as it emanates from the source. There is the element of the inherent of the will. Just as in our mundane muscle, water in the ocean also consists of drops. And this is how it can ultimately end up in a cup.
So this, when we talk about Chesed and Gevura in Atzilus, what here now in this example, what is the higher and what is the particular?
The higher is the oil that comes from Atik. Atzilus is called Eitel. It's very close to its source. This is where I said, in the human level, it's a very clear demonstration that's in it. Yes, you want to teach your child, but that the feeling for your child, the feeling for the other person, has a broader source. We said something quite interesting, that a person walks and he's walking, let's say, some paces back and forth in shul. He can pace for an enormous amount of time, and he doesn't get tired. If he walks in the street, that same amount, he'll be tired. What's the secret in this? The secret is that when he's pacing the shul, he's always pacing within a finite container. Within the walls of the shul. Therefore, when we talk about the walls of the shul, before he even makes the first step, he already projects where he is over there on the other side. That's called Ayin Base. The Chayis carries him. He doesn't have to break through and make movement from here to there. Whereas in the street, he has to break through and make every step is a new creation. I don't know if you understand it, but this is but not be able to understand or not, practically it proves itself.
That's the nimshal for that.
Huh?
You're trying to illustrate when he's in the environment of the shul. He's within a finite container. The koyach ha'alicha. It's not the overall phenomenon of movement.
And the street is?
The street is overall. The street does not bring him from place to place. He has to bring himself there. I don't know if okay. Anyway, we discussed it in the past, so bring this also in. The point which we want to understand is, like it says over here, there is a metzius of spheres and atzilus. Translated on the human level, there is a metzius of midos in the person, which is hard to identify because it seems like you're doing this because you're relating to the child, relating to the person. But that is not the whole story. Yes, you are related to the person, but then you are translating that relationship at a much lower and more practical level in terms of chesed and gvura. You want to discipline the child, it's a gvura, a very specific purpose of that. You want to teach him chesed, you want a very specific purpose, not, as I said, not that if he doesn't do that, he's going to be a wild Indian. You want him to learn this particular thing. Why? You sense the value of this particular thing. This is the midah of chesed and gvura.
Chesed and Chochmah and Chesed is implied in Atik, and it's actual in Atzilus.
Right. All right, we can continue to develop this, and the mashal, but I don't think it's necessary. All I wanted is that we should understand the words, that there is bechinas mitzius chochmah v'chesed in atzilus. Okay, let's continue further. We are at the end of the fourth line. Ubehechrech. Ubehechrech. It is an imperative, a logical imperative, that this union, that there's a mitzias of chochmah and chesed in atzilus, or in our moshel, there's a mitzias of chochmah and chesed on the human consciousness and human structure. Again, that when he is doing a chesed, he means chesed, not a general welfare. Behechrech, it's imperative shezehu b'bchinas hakelim al kol ponim. That this phenomenon of a presence of chesed and chochmah, it is at the level of kelim. Al kol ponim comes to denote that even though there is an inherent in the oiris, but for sure it is in the kelim.
For sure, this inherent limit of oiris you find in the keli.
For sure, this inherent oil, the inherent limit, definition of chochmah chesed you find in the keli. Then we say in this keli there is an oil. Again, we are constantly aiming at showing how in the oil also at the higher there is this limit. Because we see that it's mislabish in a keli, and the keli is definitely limited. So as to have a perspective, some kind of meaningful perspective. On the human level, we have the neshama, we have life itself. Life itself is bichlal, is super worldly. World does not understand what life is. This is quite obvious. There's no means to explain life, and there's no means to capture life. This is a godly gift. The fact that the world comes from a living God, that's where there is life in it. From this life, in the human being, emanate all kinds of different functioning koiches, such as, on the highest level, oinagan rotz, oinagan rotzen are what's called koiches makifim. What does makifim mean? They don't have a specific function. It's just the translation of the truth of the nefesh, and at an experiential level. Only a living being can have oineg. Only a living being can have rotzen. Rotzen, and the most powerful thing. Let me explain rotzen for a moment, since we speak about it all the time. The human being is alive because the Rebbe gave him life. This is life from the Rebbe. Then this life comes down as mislabish in a guf, or in a neshama. And it's mislabish in a neshama even, and certainly in the guf. Even though it is entirely something that is being provided for it from above. You can't take life, it's given to you, like we said in the breath. You can't take a breath, it's given to you. This gift of life that's given to you is given to you in a manner that you should be aware that you have life. Not completely unawares. Even though you cannot define what that is. But you have a full-fledged awareness of it. This is translated in oinagan rotz. I want it. I have it not because I want it. I want it because I have it. If you have it, what mean you want it? It's given to you in a manner that you should recognize what you have. It's completely provided for you. You wanting it does not create it at all. But it's given to you in a wholesome manner that you should really be alive. This is pshat that you want it. Your oineg is the same thing. Oineg is on a higher level. So the same oineg. We don't live because we have oineg. Like you said the other day, you wake up in the morning, should you have a cup of coffee? That's not human. You don't live for any experience. And yet, you are experiencing life. Or you want life. From this, so this is still completely, oh, okay. My time is up. We'll squeeze it in 4 minutes. Okay, we'll pick up and it's next time. Time is up.
you're showing that even in those koshim makifim, you have an element of rule. Is that what we're trying to show? Even though it's a experience of life itself, it's we haven't identified that.
That's why it's called a koyach.
We haven't identified that what that rule is yet.
Yeah, well, I know it's like I have a report. Yeah, hello?
Well, just want to make sure you didn't eat disconnected.
What? No. I made the coffee. No, I thought you would be concerned. No, I did not. I mean that.